There's 3, 2, and 1 on there, right?
I think so, yeah. Right when this clicks over to noon, unless, okay, that's now, clicking it.
Okay. Hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for our very first Facebook Live for the ESRA Foster Home Group. Thanks for joining us, and thank you also to ESRA and to the Foster Home Excellence Committee for putting this on. We are here today to talk about, of course, what we want for each foster springer that comes into our program, and that is a wonderful life with a family who loves the dog for the rest of his life. And specifically today we're going to talk about behavioral factors and the power that you have as a foster home to make that difference for this dog. We have a lot to talk about, but we have some housekeeping. So there's about a 20-second delay here, and the reason that's important is that we're going to present this in 3 parts, and after each part there's going to be a question and answer session with your questions driving that. We're going to try to get to all of your questions if we can. And so the way that that's going to work is you need to submit your questions during the presentation as they come up, because we have a team here behind the scenes that are compiling the questions and getting them all set up so I can answer them in a timely manner after each part. So participate. We're glad you're here. All right, so we're going to get right to it. There's 3 parts, like I said. Part 1 is what needs to be done up front before you even are notified that you're going to get a dog, when you've decided to be a foster home. Part 2 is when you go to pick the dog up. And part 3 is arriving home with a new foster dog, because all of this counts and it all happens really fast. So this is part 1. So you decided to be a foster home for ESRA, and we thank you for that. All right, so you need a plan for a foster dog. With any situation with a dog, you never want to go into it going, oh, let's see what's going to happen. That's never a good idea. It doesn't foster the dog's success, and it doesn't foster your success. So you need a plan A, you need a plan B, C, D, and E in your back pocket, because plans change. No good plan survives first contact with the enemy. All right, so that plan is going to include confinement areas, feeding, potty stuff, and training for you. So confinement areas are super important for every dog. When you bring a dog into your home, everything changes for everyone. It creates changes for the humans, for the dogs, the cats, the hamsters, the squirrels in the yard, the neighbors, everyone. So you have to consider all of that. So confinement areas are super important for all dogs. It's a place where they can feel safe and secure, have a moment alone, and it's a place where you can put the dogs when you need to, because sometimes you need to separate dogs, particularly when you get a new foster dog. So confinement areas include crates, and they also include rooms with doors that can be closed, or with baby gates, or even with 2 baby gates stacked on top of each other. There's all kinds of techniques for that. And yes, part of the process there is teaching the dog to feel secure and be happy to be in the confinement area. Okay, and then there's feeding. Basically, every animal should be fed in a room by itself. Everybody deserves to be able to just eat their meal and not have to be watching over their shoulder to see if anybody wants to get it in a minute. Dogs should be fed individual meals and not free fed. And there's no need to ever feed dogs together. That's just a fact. You can get away with it, certainly, but why not be providing that highest level of safety and security for each animal in your home? Okay, and then what goes in must come out. So there's potty areas. We're going to talk a lot about, you're going to start potty training the minute you meet this dog, because why wait? He's probably going to go to the bathroom, and it may as well be where you want it to be. So think about where that is. I mean, assuming it's outside, but probably you don't want the dog going on your patio or on the concrete around your pool or whatever. You probably want it in the grass. Maybe you even want a particular part of your yard to be the potty area. Now's the time to think about, if you've ever thought, well, I wish my dogs would just go in that back corner. Now's the time to think about, let's go ahead and have all the dogs do that, because you have that power. It's a teaching process. potty training is a teaching process, and you have to actively do it, and we're going to talk a little about that. Okay, so in our files on the Foster Home Facebook group are a lot of documents and videos that will help you if you have questions about how to do things and you know, how to go about different potty training and all kinds of other training. There's lots of information there, so avail yourselves of it. The other thing is, I hope you've all already availed yourselves of the dog reading course that ESRA now offers online, because it's a great way to get started. And I also hope, if you've done that, that you're practicing all the things you learn there. For instance, having dogs approach you, not approaching them. So when people ask, what's the best way to approach a dog? The answer is, don't. Let the dog approach you. Petting a dog if he wants to be petted, and stopping to see if he wants more, because sometimes there's a time limit. Inviting dogs to come with you rather than pulling them on leashes and collars. At the same time, conditioning dogs to enjoy things that maybe initially they didn't. That includes grooming procedures and tools, even having their collar pulled. Hey Al, can you come here? So you can condition a dog to like having his collar pulled by pulling his collar, giving him a treat. It's that simple. This is what Pavlov taught us. Yank, treat. Yank, treat. If you're starting with a new dog, you wouldn't start there. There's a video about this, by the way. You might just go, and we touch. You might even just go, and we present our hand. And that's the beginning of conditioning. So we'll talk a little more about that too. And your leash skills. I hope that you're practicing leash skills with every dog you come into contact with your own dogs and all other dogs, particularly your foster dog. Because leash skills are a human thing. And when we have them, the dogs get it. Okay, so there's some stuff you need to plan for when you're getting ready to go pick up the dog. And you can do a lot of this ahead of time too. You're going to need some equipment. You need a crate in your vehicle. You need a bed in the crate. You need a cover for the crate, which you may or may not use, but boy is it nice to be able to cover a crate and have a dog calm down. You need leashes. I like to have a clip lead and a slip lead. So we have some options. We're going to talk more about that. You gotta have treats. I like to have at least 2 levels of treats, some dry treats, and then some meat, some chicken or something, or roast beef, whatever it is. And get a treat bag. Just get a treat bag. You'll be glad you did. You can wear your treats so that the treats are accessible. Have the bag open when you go into the, wherever you're going to pick the dog up. You can access the treats easily. You don't want to go into the shelter with, your car keys and your leashes and all your stuff and your treats in a baggie and go, okay, I'm ready to get the dog. How are you going to manage the dog? You don't have any more hands. Hands are at a premium. So get a treat bag. All right, and your leash skills. You'll also need cleanup supplies. We won't go a lot into that. Bring a lot of towels and rags and cleanser and a plastic bag and all kinds of stuff. Behaviorally speaking, you need chew bones and stuffed Kongs or something like that. Why? Because you want to associate this dog's ride in your car and being in a crate and being with you over a bumpy road or whatever with something good. So let's stop and talk briefly in general about how dogs learn. So everybody learns in the same 2 ways. Octopi, cows, fish, dogs, horses, humans. There's 2 basic ways. One is association, and the other is by consequences. So association is just what I talked about before. It's just what Pavlov taught us. So anything that happens or any item that comes into your area of perception could be a good thing, could be a neutral thing, or it could be a bad thing. That's pretty much it. There's levels of good and bad, but basically we want everything that comes into this dog's world to be positive. So we're going to push for that. We stay away from neutral mainly because we can't really tell if something's really neutral. We can tell if the dog's just standing there, but what if it's really heading toward negative and we're thinking it's neutral? That's not a good idea. And we don't want anything to be negative because that just adds stress. So everything that's new that comes into the dog's realm of stimuli should be paired with good things. So we're creating this dog's future car ride behavior on this day when we pick him up and put him in our car. So not only how do you want him behaving, but how do you want him perceiving that? We want that to be a good thing. And the best way is when you put him in that crate for safety, you give him something awesome to chew on. And now he's associating everything that's going on with something good. Bring a variety, bring multiples if you're going on a long trip, and ideally bring somebody along to feed him treats, give him a new chewy, etc. So the other way that everybody learns is by consequences. And here we're going to talk about positive consequences because you know what? You don't need negative consequences. You don't need punishment. You don't need it. And we'll go into that more. All right. So don't take your own dog along to go pick up a new dog. Not necessary and detrimental. Do take another person to help you because you need to drive, and it would be ideal. You might have seen in the video, if you watched the videos before this presentation, the person sitting in the back seat, cover the crate, take the cover off, pet the dog, give him a new chewy, let you know if he threw up and you need to pull over, pet the dog, all those kinds of things, and making the whole experience great for the dog. That would be ideal. If you don't have somebody, you don't. Okay, so let's make a little plan for when we get there. When we get there, we're going to think about safety first. Safety for you and safety for the dog. Number one, read the dog. That's why we offer the dog reading course. Read the dog. He's telling you. Dogs are very transparent. He's telling you if he's comfortable or uncomfortable at every moment. Never take your eyes off a dog. Offer treats. Come here, Al. Offering a dog a treat gives you information. Does he take the treat? Which type of treats does he take? How does he take it? Okay, that gives you information. All right, and then we have 3 basic safety rules. Never put your face in a dog's face. I know you like to kiss your dog. I kiss my dog, but he's conditioned to that, and we have a process, and we both participate. You don't know this new dog. Don't put your face in his face, because if it goes bad, whether he bites or not, if he has a bad experience, that leads into his future. His future is starting now, and we don't want that. So, and I know none of us do. Don't put your hand near a dog's mouth. So this way that you see sometimes on TV when people approach a dog and go, "Hello, doggy," and where's your hand right in his mouth? That's not necessary, and we're going to talk about some better ways to do that. And the third one is the leash goes on. Come here, Al. The leash goes on before the dog comes out. And when I say out, I mean out of a crate, a kennel, a run, a door, a gate, any of those things. It seems like it's common sense, and it is, but often people will just open a gate and hold the leash up and hope they can catch the dog as he comes out. That's not a good technique, not safe for the dog. So there's 2 ways to do that. We can go in with the dog, close the door, get the leash on the dog, and then walk out with him. Or we can open the gate a little bit, block with our knee and our body, put our hand in, give the dog some treats, get the leash on, make sure it's secure, and then lead the dog out. All right? Okay. That's it for part 1. And in the next part, we'll talk about actually putting the leash on. So we're ready for some questions. Thank y'all again, and I'm looking forward to questions in part 2.
So we had no questions so far, so why don't we give it a minute or so just to catch up. Okay. What if the dog doesn't want or like treats? repeat the question.
Okay, so the first question we have is, what if the dog doesn't like or won't take treats? Good question. Like I said, offering him treats gives you information. So if a dog doesn't eat, it's because he's stressed. And it could be maybe he's sick, maybe his stomach's upset, or who knows. Or maybe he's so stressed. You know how when you get stressed you get butterflies in your stomach? Dogs do that too. And the fight or flight response demands that you don't eat. So if you're super scared and anxious, you're not going to eat. So that's information. You'll notice in the next two parts, I'll talk a little bit more about if the dog doesn't take treats, you just keep offering them. Because when we want to reinforce behavior, we don't have much to work with a new dog. Chances are that dog doesn't care if we think he's a good dog. He's got a lot going on, and he didn't really care about your opinion of whether he's a good dog or not. So food and body language and maybe some happy talk helps, but that's kind of all we have. So we offer the treat. Maybe what we hope is just smelling it reinforces a good behavior. Put it back, offer it again. That's really all you can do. They do change their minds. If he gets comfortable enough and smells that treat enough and says, well, maybe I will eat it. That can really help you. So treats are a training tool, and we want to encourage dogs to take them. And if they won't, you gotta work around it. That's just how it is. So thanks for asking.
What kind of collar do you recommend?
What kind of collar? That's a really good question, and it kind of depends on where you get the dog and what he already has on. So we don't want to stress the dog any more than necessary. I talk about stress a lot, but it's super important. If he has a collar on, we're just going to use that collar. In certain situations, we're going to use a slip lead. I really like slip leads. They're not I'm not going to, use them to correct the dog. You're bad. It's not about that. It's just about the ease and the comfort of getting something on his neck that can be secure and walking with him on a loose leash. So that's why I always like to have this as well as a clip lead. Of course, if he has a collar on, you want to make sure that it's a good tightness, that it's not going to slip over his head and it's not choking him. If he has a harness on, you use the harness. You kind of just have to go with what's there. Of course, you don't want to put a chain collar or a pinch collar or any of those things on him. That would be unnecessary. Although, you could certainly use a chain collar on a loose leash and not choke him with it. So there's a variety of answers to that. Thank you.
A relevant comment, somebody made a mistake yesterday of not checking the dog's collar when she picked it up, and the collar was too loose.
Yeah, so our team just pointed out, somebody said, just yesterday, they didn't check a dog's collar, and it was too loose, and it came off over his head. So, yeah, so there's another kind of collar, and I don't have one right here, although I might. It's called a Martingale, and it's maybe not as relevant for picking up a new dog, but there are dogs that slip out of collars really easily. They have a lot of practice at it. This is a Martingale. It's sort of like a loop with another loop through it, so that if it can tighten a little bit, but not that much. And yes, people who are force trainers do correct dogs with these, but that's not what I'm talking about using it for. If a dog has a kind of a small head and a fat neck, and they slip out of collars easily, I love putting collars on, then this is going to help you. There are dogs who can just kind of go like this and pop their head right over a collar, so this will help you. And it's not a bad thing to have along. It's easier to put over their head. Yes, Al, you may put this on. So yeah, it's an option, but it doesn't matter so much as long as the dog's safe. Harness, collar, whatever around his neck is just kind of up to you. Make sure that you're reinforcing with lots of treats and associating it with good things, and we're going to talk more about that in part 2.
Okay, one more. A person's foster shies away from her husband when he tries to put on a walking harness. How can we get the dog to feel more comfortable with the husband putting on the harness?
So the question is, this sounds like a current foster who shies away from the man of the family when he goes to put a harness on the dog. and how can we deal with that. So that's slightly out of the purview of today's presentation, but I think in the next section and the third section, you're going to see some tips that will help you with that. The dog reading course will also help you with that, using really great body language on the part of the guy. You know, dogs are always afraid of men. I'm sorry guys, but y'all have low voices and you're kind of rough and you kind of just stomp around and stuff. So you gotta, we're going to talk more about body language and stuff in a minute. So, hey, stay tuned for that.
Okay, no more questions right now.
Good. Alrighty. Well, I have to walk over here and get my paper from the floor where it blew. Okay, now we're ready. Okay, we're ready for part 2. Part 2 is that lovely day when the coordinator has called and said, can you go get this dog and foster it? And you're like, yay, I always wanted to foster a dog. Right? But then you're also going, oh, do I have my plan? But you do have your plan, because you've been planning and you've got all your stuff. All right. So, we talked about safety. No face in the dog's face. No hands in the dog's mouth. Leash goes on before the dog comes out. Super important. Always thinking about stress reduction. So when you arrive where the dog is, I want you to recognize that you have the power. You are so powerful as a foster and a dog handler that when you first come into contact with this dog, you're not even close enough to touch it. As soon as the dog sees you, you are now an important stimulus in that dog's life. So what kind of stimulus are you going to be? You have the power to start shaping his future. And to me, that's super exciting. And it starts now. It doesn't start, we don't just pick the dog up and say, oh, however I get it home is fine, and then, tomorrow I'll start training. You already started training. The minute you see him, you're training. How awesome is that? All right, so stress reduction is key. Reading the dog, keeping your eye on the dog the whole time, and using treats to get information from the dog, to reinforce behaviors that you like, and to associate whatever comes along with good things is super important. This is not just distracting the dog, this is training the dog, and it's good training. Okay, come here, Al. Come here, get up. Don't eat that, you're so ridiculous. Okay, so even if my dog's right here, if the dog is really close to you, you don't have to be that close. If the dog's really close to you, you can still engage him in participation. Come here, buddy. So now he was right here, and I could have grabbed him, but I elicited his participation in this process to come close to me. In that process, I'm also using my hands to block to make sure that his head doesn't go in my face or anything like that. All the time I'm watching, because things can change in the drop of in the blink of an eye, the drop of a hat, whatever. All right. So when we want to invite dogs to approach us, which we always do, let's talk about some body language. So I'm gonna stand up and go over here. Got some treats. So here's your best body language. Turn to the side, always, because my front's pretty wide, but my side is much narrower, and it's less intrusive to the dog. You can also drop right in your personal space into a squat. He came right over. Of course, this is my dog, so he would have anyway. You can even squat and turn your back to a dog and still watch him. So your face isn't right there staring at him. It's way less intrusive to him. You can, sometimes I like to scratch on the ground a little bit and act like I got something super interesting over here. And a lot of dogs will just come right over because they can't stand it. They're like, what are you doing? I need to be a part of that. You can turn your back and kind of run away and ask them to follow you. Come on, puppy, puppy. Yay, yay. And now they're close. And now you can deal with them. Notice I keep all my appendages really close. At no point do I stand over here and reach over to the dog. There's no reason to do that. We want the dog close enough to us that we can handle him. So we want to always be drawing close, backing up, turning, pulling in, and so forth. The other thing you don't want to do ever is, come here, doggy. A lot of times, I know, sometimes my knees hurt too. and it's hard to drop into a squat, but it does not help in most cases to go, come here, doggy, because you got really big and really close right then. And remember, if the dog doesn't want to come up to you, you're the monster in the scenario. So make yourself less monstery, not more, okay? So those are some good body language tips. Okay, if the dog, if the dog does come close and want to be petted, pet him on the side of his neck, under his chin, on his side over here. Some dogs will back up to you, pet their butt. You know, you can do all that. Don't come over him. But pet for 3 seconds and stop. Does he come closer and say, do you want, you know, to pet me more? Al's like, I'd rather go look outside right now. But that's super important because some dogs have a time limit. And remember, I talk a lot about trigger stacking, and there's a lot of trigger stacking happening right now at this moment when this dog meets you, because whatever's going on around him, whatever you've contributed, you know, the weather, who knows what else is going on. It may be that he thought petting was nice, but then something else arose in his little brain as important, and he's like, whoa, I kind of need this to stop right now. So you want to give him that option. Stop. Don't, you know, we humans love to pet dogs, and we get really into, and then we talk to the person, and we stop looking. You can't do that. You got to keep your eyes on the dog. Always be asking the dog, how are you with this situation, dog? All right, so now we're going to put the leash on and go to the car. All right? Come here, Al. I need you again, buddy. Come here. So, if we don't know the background of the dog, we don't know what his experience with a leash is, so why not use what Pavlov taught us, and when we show him the leash, we give him a treat, just in case. Let's push that toward the positive. Also, it's safe, because if you're going to put a clip lead on, you can be feeding the dog with a handful of treats over here as you clip the leash on. Now it's on there. Now you get some more treats, and you're ready to walk away and use your leash skills. Come on, puppy. Yay, we're going to go over here. Great. Okay? So, if you're going to use a slip lead, we can do something similar. Remember, we always want to get these dogs to participate. We don't want to trick them. I mean, we are going to trick them just a little bit with the slip lead, maybe. But not very much, as little as possible. So we're going to hold this up. Yay, leashes are good. Leashes are good. Leashes are good. And I'm going to try to not put it over his head. I'm going to try to get the dog to put his head through the leash with the treats. And a lot of treats, not just one. And then we can keep feeding him treats while we carefully, you know, tighten this up. We're ready to go. And remember, we want the leash loose. We don't ever want to have a tight leash and pull the dog. We want to invite him to come along, give him treats for doing so, and so forth. All right? So now, got to put him in the car. So we've got him, let him go to the bathroom. You know, ideally before you put the leash on, let him go to the bathroom. After you put the leash on, ask him again, do you need to go again? And give him a treat if he'll take it for going to the bathroom in the right place, because guess what? You're potty training now, right now. So we get him to the car, and we want to get him as close as possible because we don't want to carry him a long way. So, you know, I've got the door open, I've got the crate door open. You could put a few treats inside the crate, way deep in there, so he can just go right in and eat them. Or, come here, buddy, thank you for bringing me that. Come over here. And then we can use treats to position the dog whichever side we want to. So I'm going to go with him here. Actually, maybe I want to go with him here. So we can position the dog the direction we want. So remember, we want the head away from our head, and our head just got closer. So we're going to use our arm under his neck to secure that head. If it's a bigger dog, you may want to get your hand under, I'm using the leash, by the way, to secure his head too. I'm not tightening it, but I just have it. So I can go under his arm. Or if he's a smaller dog, I might just pick him up like this. My other arm's under his abdomen. And 1, 2, 3, up we go. Nose goes in first. Make sure all the legs are secure before you set him down. And then if you didn't already put treats in there, reach in and give him some. Take his leash off, or if it's an iffy situation, leave his leash on. Make sure you have an extra in case he eats it up. Close the door, cover it, and you're off. And remember, this car ride is creating his future car ride behavior. Every experience a dog has feeds into his next experience. All right, that's the end of part 2. We're ready for some questions.
What about dogs that are aggressive around treats?
What about dogs that are aggressive around treats? I would need some more details there, but in the third section we're going to talk a little bit about some alternate ways to give treats. One is, for instance, we're going to talk about jumpy dogs and how nice it is to drop treats on the ground. So if you have a dog that, if you're talking about a dog that's like super stressed and his jaw's tight and he's like, arr, arr, he takes the treats really hard, you can just drop treats on the floor in front of him. And that is a skill that you can practice with your own dogs. You can get really good at dropping them, like, the dog's here, I can drop it here, he's going to be there, he's going to eat it. I can drop it one more foot in front, he eats it. Drop it one more foot in front, he eats it. So you're keeping your hands out of the picture, if that's what you mean. Salivation is a good thing, though, in most cases. If the dog's salivating, wanting more treats, then he's likely not gearing up to bite people. So that's mostly how it works, and keeping your hands away from his mouth can be a good thing. And if you have more details on that, you can feed those through the group there.
What if I'm not comfortable picking up a dog I don't know, and then somebody asks to repeat the demo, which you might just say that they can watch it again, or if you have time, you could do that again.
Come here now. Don't leave that leash, buddy. Okay.
What if I'm not comfortable picking up a dog I don't know?
What if you're not comfortable picking up a dog you don't know? Well, so, okay, one thing that oddly came to mind right there is you probably want to bring a lot of towels with you, because sometimes dogs at the shelter are kind of dirty and stinky, and you can cover them with a towel to pick them up and keep yourself clean. And you can also use the towel to block their head, so that can be a good thing. So we actually are I really want to do more training with y'all. And I have an entire behavior program full of classes that we teach shelter personnel. And it includes using towels to cover dogs' heads and so forth, and pick up and deal with those iffy dogs. However, if you are a foster and you get somewhere and you're afraid to deal with a dog, the best thing for you to do is to recognize that, pat yourself on the back for saying, thank you, self, for being honest, and call your coordinator, leave the dog there, and let the coordinator make another plan for it. Because there is no shame in being afraid of a dog. Hey, Al, come here. Come here, you. They have a lot of teeth. They can hurt you bad. A dog can kill a person, right? I mean, they have. So, here's Al's teeth. Al doesn't want to kill anybody. But they're a dangerous animal. So that's why it's so important to read them, to listen to them, and to be aware of what's going on around them. And if you're scared, there may be a really good reason for it. And I'll tell you, if you feel that real deep fear in the pit of your stomach, and you're a person that's experienced with dogs, I've had it, walk away. Listen to that, because it's super important. So that would be my advice there. And again, if you have more details, you can present them.
Is it better to reach behind the back legs or in front of the back legs when you're picking the dog up? Which gives you better control?
Good question. Is it better to reach behind the back legs or in front of the back legs when you're picking a dog up? Which gives you better control? All right, Al, come here, please. Why do you love this collar so much? Come over here. Okay, so in front of the back legs gives you better control. But there is a time to use the reach behind the back legs. So somebody asked for an extra demo. So if it's a smaller dog that doesn't weigh that much, I'll pick him up like this, especially if I don't have to lift very far. Al's actually, he's pushing 50 pounds, so he's a little bigger. So I feel like, that's a lot of pressure on his neck. So I would probably put my hand between his front legs and under the one like this, and I can still block his head from biting me like this and pick him up. Okay. If a dog has had abdominal surgery, if the dog's been spayed, or if the belly's kind of fat and it looks like something's wrong, you don't want to put pressure on that abdomen unless you really have to. So you certainly can pick them up like this and scoop the legs like this. However, when you're from somebody who's done this a lot at shelters with a lot of rough dogs, once you get the back legs like this, they can kick back and jump right out of your arms. So that's why this one is more secure, but you may have to use this one. And if you have a situation where the dog's all crazy, and we're going to talk in the next section too about just stop for a minute and regroup. That's why you have plans B, C, D, and E in your back pocket. Because if you're not fully comfortable that you know what's about to happen, you need to stop and pull out another plan. Okay?
Back to the first question, clarification, asking about dogs that are aggressive around treats, was thinking about giving them treats while, when you're getting a new dog, giving them treats while you're trying to put the lead on. So, I think just any pointers with...
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So, what I might do,
Repeat.
I'm sorry, I can't repeat it, say it again.
It was the question about dogs that are aggressive around treats, and specifically the person was wondering about when you're putting the lead on them.
Okay, back to the person who was talking about dogs that are aggressive around treats. And still I'm not sure if you're talking about dogs that are just taking the treats really fast and hard and you need to be better at delivering them, or if you need to maybe deliver them on the ground. So I might, first of all, if you have a really snappy dog, you give the treats low and close so they have to bend their head to get it, because if they're bending their head up toward their neck, then they can't get their jaws tight. That's just a thing. So if it's, if this dog is really grabby about the treats, you can drop them on the floor. Kind of loop the leash over, give him some treats, and recognize that the more treats you're giving him, the more he's probably recognizing that he doesn't need to be all bossy and grabby about them because he's getting plenty of them. Give him more. Just let him eat if he wants the treats. That would be my approach. So if you're talking about doing a clip lead, like I was talking about feeding them, you could put them on the ground, put a big old pile of them for him to eat while you hook the leash on. That would be another way. So I don't know that, I may not be getting the full gist of the question, but be careful.
I think that's all the questions. There was a comment here that I usually just let them get in the car by themselves if possible.
So somebody commented that they like to let the dog get in the car by themselves. If you have a low back seat and the dog is capable and you can toss treats into the crate and let them go in there, or maybe you have one of those hammocks that's keeping the dog, you want to keep the dog secure in the car. I'm a big fan of putting them in a crate for travel because you just don't ever know what's going to happen. And how's it going to be when you get home and you open the door? Is the dog going to wait in there? Do you have another person to entertain the dog and keep it in place while you open the door and get the leash on to get it out? If you do, great. If the dog will walk in, that's perfectly fine. I'm generally hesitant about letting dogs jump out of cars more so than letting them jump into cars, because if they're old or they're young and they jam their shoulders and elbows as they hit the pavement coming out of the car, that's a concern. If it's a really low car, you can certainly do that. Make sure you keep control of the dog. So yes, there are other ways to do this. I'm talking kind of a general ideal.
What if the dog panics when you pick it up?
What if the dog panics when you pick it up? That's a really good question. Then you set it down. So in the third section, you'll hear me say that. You already heard me say it. If at any moment you're enacting a plan and it seems to be going bad, get out of it. That's why you keep the leash on the dog. You always have your backup. Leash is on the dog securely. You've got your treats. You've got everything as organized as you can, and you can back out of whatever direction you were moving and start over with a different plan. So if the dog panics and flails, set it down, start over, regroup. What's a better way to pick it up? Can you get somebody to help you? If it's a really big dog, by the way, we have a whole class on call it in and out training. Putting dogs in things, getting dogs out of things, picking dogs up, and all that is part of it. And there are dogs that are big enough that need 2 people to pick them up safely and comfortably. So think about that. You know, there are other ways. You can put a towel under it, you can wrap it in a towel, cover its head with a towel and all that, but that's for a more advanced class, which y'all are ready for, and I'm ready to give you.
What if I'm not comfortable picking up a dog I don't know?
Back to, what if I'm not comfortable picking up a dog I don't know? Then you need to call the coordinator, tell them that, and say, I'm not ready to foster this dog. Because sometimes dogs need to be picked up. And like I said before, pat yourself on the back for being honest. If you're scared, you're scared. And if you're scared, don't tell yourself, oh, you just have to get through this. That is not a good technique. You need to move away. And by the way, this applies to dogs, and we're going to talk about this in part 3. If the dog's not ready to learn something, he's not going to learn it. And if you're scared, you're not going to learn to pick a dog up in the middle of fear any more than a dog can learn to deal with fear in the middle of when he's scared out of his mind. So it's not a good situation, and you should get out of it.
Shouldn't we leave the leash on the entire transport?
Shouldn't we leave the leash on the entire transport? That's a possibility. There are many ways to do that. If the dog's in the crate, you need to consider, and you don't know what that dog's going to do. If you give him a Kong or a chew bone, maybe he'll chew that instead of the leash. I don't know if y'all saw Al, my lovely dog, over here, picking up leashes and collars and carrying them off to his mat to chew on while we were talking a while ago. Normally he doesn't do that, but he did. So, I don't know what he's thinking, and I don't know what this dog's going to do. So, if you have an extra leash, and it's okay if the dog chews that one up, leave it on him. If it's your only leash, don't leave it on him. It's a good question. Maybe there's certainly a layer of safety if you have the leash on the dog, but if he eats it, you lost the safety. So.
What about a fearful dog that's looking for an escape route and is afraid of being on a leash?
What about a fearful dog that's looking for an escape route and is afraid of being on a leash? So, good question. That's a little bit out of our area of the talk today. That's kind of a whole class in itself, fearful dogs. We are going to talk a little bit about fearful dogs in the next segment, but fearful and feral dogs, dogs that are super afraid of everything, it's a whole nother level. We have answers for that, but they're long and they're ifs and things like that. In general, we talked about presenting the leash and starting to make it positive. When we work with dogs at the shelter, sometimes we take a few minutes and condition the dog to the leash before we ever start to put it on. Much like in the video of the collar touch conditioning. Hey Al, come here. Can you get up? We can do, I did this a little bit, we can do it for more. Leash, treat. Yay, that's awesome. Leash, treat. That was fun. Leash, treat, another treat. Awesome. We can put the leash on the floor in front of the dog, and as he looks at it, we can offer treats inside the leash. And in that way, we're working to condition the dog to the leash. However, we're also conditioning the dog to the person at the same time. But it may take more than you've got that day. And in this case, it's going to be really helpful to have that extra person with you. You know, you can cover the dog with a towel, carry it out, put it in the crate. Maybe just do it without a leash at all if it really is the leash. There's a lot to consider there.
Okay, last one I think, and you may want to pass on this. We pick up dogs from owners that sometimes are fearful of crates. I guess they mean the dog. Can you talk about other methods of safe transport?
Other methods of safe transport if a dog is afraid of a crate. Yeah, that's a good one. And just like your confinement area, when you go to pick up a dog, you want to have as many options available as you can. other methods of safe transport. I mean, I've heard them all. You know, certainly somebody sitting in the back seat with the dog, if it's a friendly dog and that's safe. I mean, the concern is, what else is the dog afraid of, and what's going to set it off and cause it to get upset and bite somebody in the back seat of the car? I mean, sorry guys, but that's real life. Putting the dog in the back seat in one of those hammock things is pretty safe, unless it just decides to come over into the front seat. Plenty of people just drive with dogs in their lap, and I think it's a terrible idea, and I would never recommend that. And that's why I like crates so much. The larger the crate, the better. Covered crate, plenty of softness in there in terms of a bed. Don't try to put a dog in, you know, they say just big enough to turn around. That's probably not what you want with a dog that may have not been in a crate before. You probably want the giantest crate that'll fit in your car. If you have an SUV and you've got that cargo area, particularly if you have the wire mesh thing and that's kind of like a crate, maybe it'll go in there. Ideally, the dog would be secured in some way. I mean, plenty of people have driven with just a leash closed in the door of the car so that the dog at least can't, you know, fly into the front seat, or, you know, when you open the door, you can grab the leash. It's a precarious situation. You know, ideally, you want the dog in a crate. So you're safe, the dog's safe, everybody's safe.
Let's move on to 3.
Okay, so we are now ready to move on to part 3. Excuse me. Okay, part 3 for today is arriving home with the dog. And as you've seen, all this stuff has taken place before you ever get the dog and on that very day that you get the dog. And again, I want you to remember how much power you have to affect the dog's next experience. And some of the questions that we've had about these really scared dogs and dogs that are upset and so forth, this experience makes a big difference as to how things are going to turn out. So everything that happens now affects the next thing that comes along. But okay, so we're talking about your basically normal situation. So you're arriving home, you're driving, you know, however long it's been. You get there, you pull into your driveway. Of course, when you get the dog out, you want to practice. The leash goes on before the dog comes out. Whether you go in and leash the dog up and come out with it, or you make, you know, you reach in and put the leash on, use lots of treats to position the dog, and then invite the dog out, lift the dog out carefully and comfortably, and then what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to see if he needs to go to the bathroom. Honestly, even if it was just 10 minutes ago that you were at the owner's house and he went to the bathroom, you don't know if he needs to go again. Ask him, because more reinforcers equals more learning. And the more times this dog gets a treat for going to the bathroom in the grass, the more times he's going to go to the bathroom in the grass. And that's what we want. And you can truly not ever have a dog pee or poop in your house. It can happen. Okay, so ask him if he needs to go to the bathroom. Maybe you have some water out already outside. Let him explore the backyard a little bit with you. Maybe you can have somebody bring some water out. You know, if it's a boy dog and it pees on 7 shrubs, he gets 7 treats. How awesome is that? That's a good head start to your potty training. All right, so what are we here for? We're really here to increase the adoptability of this dog, increase the probability that he gets adopted quickly into the best family in the world and stays there for the rest of his life. Can we just cover that door, please? Okay, sorry. So increasing adoptability. Adoptability is hard to define, but we kind of know what it is. It is, in general, a dog that can live happily in a human household. Sometimes we forget that we're asking an alien species to live in a human household. That doesn't really make much sense to them. All right, so the potty training is really key to that. Nobody wants a dog that pees in the house. when we talk about evaluation and training, they go hand in hand. When we evaluate a dog, first of all, it's an ongoing process the whole time the dog is in our home, but we also need to pair that with training. Never do we just turn the dog loose and sit back and go, oh, let's evaluate him. Oh, look what he's doing. What's he doing now? Oh, wonder why he's doing that. We are always working to learn to predict what's about to happen so that we can have the dog only doing things that we know that people like, okay? And the way that comes about is in two ways. One is we reinforce the things that we like, and we reinforce the opposite of things that we don't like. So reinforcement, by the way, is the real term for reward, and reinforcement is specifically defined as something that you give to the dog that is contingent on his behavior, that happens right after the behavior, and that increases the probability of the behavior happening again. Come here, Al. So if Al happens to sit, then I'll just give him a treat. It's not, I don't have to tell him that right now. He doesn't have to know the word. If he's a new foster dog, we just reinforce everything we like. So a default sit, by the way, is a really good thing. Another thing that we really like to do with foster dogs right off the bat is learn for ourselves. We never ever want to grab things out of dogs' mouths. We don't, any more than you want to be, you have something in your hand and somebody comes along and yanks it away from you. We don't want to yank stuff away from dogs. We want to teach dogs that dropping it out of their mouth voluntarily is a good thing. So when they do that, we will pay them for it. So trading is a really valuable thing to do. And now Al doesn't want to put anything in his mouth. Basically, if he had something in his mouth, I would just hold a treat up there. He would drop it because he wants the treat, and I would give him the treat. And then you can position their head, by the way, as they, drop the thing, move them over to eat the treat so you can safely reach and get it in case they were going to guard it. So if we start that right off the bat, in this transition moment with this dog, we have a chance to say, I don't know how it was previously for you, dog, but this is how it's going to be here. If you have something in your mouth, I will give you a treat. And then you know what? If it's a toy, I'll give it back to you. So you can get a treat and get the item back in some cases. In other cases, if it's something you didn't want him to have, you keep it. Maybe you give him 2 treats. It's all about reinforcing the behavior of spitting the thing out of his mouth, not letting you yank it out of his mouth, but literally spitting it out. Okay, so those are super key. All right, reinforcing and 4 on the floor is super key also. Reinforcing the opposite of what you don't like would include those jumpy dogs. Some dogs you meet, you can tell right away, they just come up easily onto their back feet. They just seem to be always up there. So immediately you see that, and you start dropping treats on the floor. Just dropping them on the floor. Because if the dog's going down to eat the treat, that's the opposite of coming up for whatever other reason he was doing that. And so now that you know that about this dog, you've seen a trend, now you're always going to drop treats on the floor, or at least give him low. If he's, some dogs are like, oh, I eat food off the floor, I don't know why I'm going to do that. Just give him low, give him low, give him low, so that his hands are on the floor as he's eating the treat. And for heaven's sake, be careful that you don't sometimes offer him up here where he has to kind of jump up to get him, because then you're encouraging the jumping up accidentally because you didn't pay attention. Okay, so if you have a dog, come here, hon. If you have a dog that's all over you, which some dogs are, just all over you, they just want to crawl up on you, and that's really nice and fun and all that, but we also want dogs to have balance in their lives. So we can feed them kind of away from you. So they come up and you're like, oh, I'm so glad you came close, and it's nice to be away from me at the same time, okay? So if you have a fearful dog, and somebody was asking about fearful dogs before. So with fearful dogs, one of the things that we want to recognize is, remember, he's fearful of you in most cases. You're the scary monster. So if he works up the courage to take a step towards you or even lean towards you, hey, Al, come here, then you give him a treat right then. Don't ask for more. You know, if he's only right there, but he came forward to that point, give him a treat there. And then if he comes forward again, give him another one, for heaven's sake. But resist the urge, if he took one step towards you, to keep going, oh, do you want more and more and more and more? Because he may want the treats, but then he may all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I'm right on top of that scary monster, and become more scared. So another technique that works really well for fearful dogs is they come forward a little and you're like, oh, I'm so proud of you, and you toss a treat for them to go away. And guess what? Taking that pressure off of being close to you may get them to come closer again. You can either give them a treat close and then throw the treat away, or they could just step forward and you could just toss the treat away from you. And they'll start kind of being like a bungee cord dog, coming closer and closer and closer. But be sure and take a break and don't ask for too much in that one session. But it works really well for them. Some people call that treat and retreat. But anyway, it just helps fearful dogs. So, all right, so I'm going to give you one little scenario to use. If you have a dog who, we all want dogs to do things, right? So we're trying to get the dog to do things. Here's kind of a hierarchy of ways to get him to do things. So if he does it on his own, come here, Al. Hey, come on over here. If you're trying to get him, let's picture we're trying to get him to go outside or come out of his crate. So he comes forward on his own. Come here, bud. And we give him a treat. So that was kind of inviting. The next step is invite him to come forward. Come here, buddy. And he gets a treat. So he's still hesitant. Then we're going to lure him. So I want to show you really the best way to lure. And it's not, like I was talking about the fearful dogs, don't just keep asking for more. Where you go, oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. And when's he get the treat? Never. So what we really want to do is he's here. And I say, hey, bud, if you come here, you get a treat. So I want him to go over there. And then if you come here, you can get another treat. And if you come here, you can get another treat. And if you come here, get another treat. And you may just get him where you want him to go like that. And it works really well. If that doesn't work, lure with better treats. And then, you know, your final level is what we call the trail of chicken, which is a great technique for going through doors. So you're just, you know, the dog's afraid to go through a door. You just make a trail right along a path. So he's associating going through the door with the good treats. And he's also learning one step forward gets him one more treat. And it is an excellent training technique. And before you know it, the dog's like, I'll go through the door just to get a treat after I get through it. All right. And then the other piece of that is, if at any moment you're getting frustrated or the dog's getting frustrated, just stop. Just stop. You can come back in 5 minutes. You can come back in 15 minutes. Sometimes you can come back and do it again tomorrow. It's probably not an emergency. So just stop and regroup. Do another plan. Potty training, okay, and stress management. Final topic. Always be reading the dog. Don't add stress, reduce stress. That first day, wrap him in cotton wool, put him in a room, play music, have quiet. Don't add any more stimuli that day. His whole life just changed. When he's ready, add one new thing per day. Things you can add, lavender in a diffuser, DAP diffusers, calming treats. There's so many on the market now that you can use. Again, I said music, whatever. And then, for you, work on being predictable. We want the dog to not have to be surprised. Be predictable. Always take him out the same way. Always, be predictable in yourself. Don't, grab him, surprise him. Always look at things in the way that he's probably looking at them. Clear communication, good associations, minimal stimuli all at one time. Chewing is a great stress reducer. Bones, bully sticks, whatever. Mental stimulation, puzzles, relaxation, sniffing, good quality play that's not frantic and crazy, and the right kind of exercise, same thing, not frantic, good quality exercise, loose leash, no stress. So what we really are looking to produce here are dogs who can make good choices in a human household. It's not so much about training them to do things on cue. That's great, and I love to do that. Sit, down, come, stay, all those things, that's all great. But if we can create a dog who has a repertoire of behaviors in his head that he's been reinforced for, like keeping 4 feet on the floor, laying on a mat, pausing before just rushing through a door, that's a dog who has the potential to be a great pet in his adoptive home. So that's the end of part 3. Thank you, and I'll answer some more questions if you have them.
What about the occasional dog that isn't food or treat motivated?
What about the occasional dog who isn't food or treat motivated? So, in most cases, a dog who doesn't eat well is stressed / anxious, which we use those terms interchangeably, and whenever they can relax and feel more comfortable, they will eat more readily. And until then, you can offer a treat, let them know it's available, let them sniff it, and then put it away. Offer it again, put it away. And I have a dog right here who came to me super stressed and didn't eat well, but he still didn't eat meals that well, but he'll take a treat because it's a skill that he's learned. And I need him to know it because it's a great reinforcement technique. So you work through it, but you certainly use other things too. You can use a toy. You can use going outside. If you want to go outside, can you pause? Can you sit? Now I'll open the door. Whatever. If you want your meal, can you sit? Can you pause? Here's your meal. But he doesn't like food. So you can use all of those things, and you should. But the joy of giving treats is they're fast, and you can get a lot of behaviors in a row.
So you're at an hour and 1 minute. I don't know if you want to keep taking questions or if the event is over.
It's up to them. Is anybody saying anything?
Yeah, we're still getting questions here.
Ask them.
Okay. All right, so the next I'm
Okay, so we're going to answer a few more questions. I don't know how long we intended to stay on here. We're going to check with Beth.
So are there any products you recommend to help with stress? Thunder shirt, calming collar, or essential oils?
Are there any products I recommend to deal with stress, like thunder shirts and calming collars and so forth? Yes, all of them. They all work to a degree. Some more than others. I would try everything. It is so important to reduce dogs' stress because they can't be successful in life as a stressed dog. And stress is becoming a habit for dogs when it's happening. Whatever dogs are doing a lot is becoming the way that they are and the way that they tend to deal with things. So we got to change that. I hear people say, "Oh, I put a thunder shirt on my dog. It didn't do anything." You don't always know that it's working. It's not a dramatic change. And I've had a lot of luck with just tight t-shirts and thunder shirts and lavender in a diffuser. I've honestly never used DAP, but I've used Feel Away for cats. Tons of calming treats on the market, and there are some that work better than others, but I think it's probably dependent on the dogs. Yeah, all of it.
What's the best way to introduce new dogs to other dogs in the household?
What's the best way to introduce dogs to other dogs in the household? That is an entire topic, and we want to do a presentation on that. If you go, I believe that on my website, there is an article on that, and it might be in the Facebook group files of the Foster Home Facebook group. And if you look at it, you'll see it's very long. And the first step to that is understanding how to read dogs really well. Because the process of introductions is, we can't force dogs to say, okay, I'm going to go through these steps and then you're going to be happy. That's not what it is. We go through steps in order to ask dogs questions like, how are you feeling now, dog? And then that guides what our next step is. And if we can't tell how the dog's feeling, then it's really hard to go further. So the dog reading course is the first step. Check the files and see if introducing dogs is on there. And then I think it's on my website. And look for another presentation on that. All right. We're going to end on that one. I am so appreciative of everybody who wants to learn about dogs. And I am here to teach, and I'm ready. And I love it that you guys want to be the best fosters you can be, because that's what makes a difference to these dogs. So thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you again.
Yes, please. Okay. All right, yeah, so we